The Vreth had watched Earth for 50 years. They sent tiny machines to float in the sky and record everything. They studied how humans walked, how they ate, how they fought, and how they died. After all that watching, they made a decision. Humans were weak. Their bones broke easily. Their skin tore like paper. They lived such short lives that the Vreth found it almost funny. A Vreth could live for 800 years. A human was lucky to reach 100. So when the Vreth finally came to collect humans, they did not bring diplomats or gifts. They brought slave ships. Una was working on the Europa mining colony when they arrived. She was 28 years old, with short black hair and hands covered in engine grease. Before coming to Europa, she had been a professional fighter. She had won 32 fights and lost only 3. But fighting did not pay the bills, and her younger brother Taiho needed money for his engineering school. So she became a mechanic on a cargo ship and tried to forget the feeling of her fists, hitting flesh. The day the Vreth came started like any other day. Una was fixing a broken fuel pump when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. She ran to the window and saw something that made her heart stop. A ship hung in the black sky above the colony. It was bigger than anything she had ever seen. It looked like a giant insect made of metal and bone. Smaller ships dropped from the big one like eggs falling from a spider. They crashed through the colony's dome and released clouds of yellow gas. Una covered her mouth and ran, but the gas was everywhere. Her eyes burned. Her lungs felt like fire. She fell to the ground and watched the world turn dark. When she woke up, she was in a cage. The cage was made of some kind of energy that buzzed when she touched it. All around her were other cages with other humans inside. Some were crying. Some were screaming. Some just sat there with empty eyes, too scared to move. Una looked for Taiho and found him 3 cages away. He was awake and looking at her. He did not cry. He just nodded, like he was telling her that he was okay. The Vreth came to sort them soon after. Una got her first real look at them and felt her stomach twist. They were tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet, with bodies like insects. They had 4 arms and 2 legs. Their skin was hard and shiny, like the shell of a beetle. Their heads were long and narrow, with big black eyes that showed no feeling at all. When they spoke, their voices sounded like metal scraping against metal. They walked between the cages and pointed at humans. Some humans they sent to the left. Some they sent to the right. Una watched and tried to understand the pattern. The young and strong went left. The old and sick went right. She did not want to think about what happened to the ones on the right. A Vreth guard stopped in front of Taiho's cage. It looked at him for a long moment, then pointed to the right. Yun. Slammed her hands against the energy bars. The buzz burned her palms, but she did not care. She screamed at the guard. She called it every bad word she knew. The guard turned to look at her, and if insects could look amused, this one did. It walked over to her cage and made a gesture. The energy bars disappeared. Before Una could move, the guard grabbed her arm and threw her to the ground. It was strong, much stronger than her. It said something in its metal voice, and the other guards made sounds that might have been laughter. Then it kicked her in the stomach. Pain exploded through her body. She could not breathe. The guard reached down to grab her again, probably to throw her into a cage on the right side. The side for the weak. The side for the disposable. Something inside Una changed in that moment. She had spent years training her body. Years learning how to turn pain into power. Years studying where to hit and how to hit. The guard thought she was weak because she was small. Because she was human. Because she was lying on the ground, gasping for air. It was wrong. When the guard's hand came close, Una moved. She did not think. Her body just acted. She rolled to the side, came up on one knee, and drove her elbow into the guard's midsection. She hit the soft spot between the hard plates of its shell, the place where the sections of armor connected. The guard made a sound she had never heard before. It was high and sharp, like a scream, but worse. Purple blood sprayed from the wound. The guard stumbled backward, holding its stomach with two of its hands. It looked at her with those big black eyes, and for the first time, she saw something in them. Fear. Why Una did not give it time to recover. She stepped forward and hit it again. And again. Each punch found the soft places. Each punch made more purple blood fly. The guard fell to its knees, then fell on its face. It did not get up. For a moment, everything was silent. Every human in every cage stared at her. Every breath guard stood frozen. Nobody could believe what had just happened. A human, a small female human, had just killed one of them with her bare hands. Then the alarm started. Breath guards ran toward her from every direction. Una knew she could not fight them all. She knew she was going to die or be captured again. But she also knew something else. She knew that she had hurt them. She had shown them that humans could fight back. As the guards surrounded her and forced her to the ground, she looked at Taiho. He was smiling. It was a small smile, but it was there. He had seen what she could do. He knew now that there was hope. The Vreth put her in a special cage, one with thicker bars and more guards. They talked about her in their metal voices, and even though she could not understand their words, she understood their tone. They were worried. They were confused. They had thought humans were weak. They were wrong. And Una was going to make sure they never forgot it. The Vreth did not kill Una for what she had done. She expected death. She was ready for it. But death would have been too easy, and the Vreth were not interested in easy. They took her to Station Korth. Station Korth was a massive place that floated in the darkness between stars. It was as big as a city, with towers and domes and lights that blinked in 100 different colors. Millions of beings lived there, from dozens of different species. But Una quickly learned that there were only two types of beings on Station Korth. There were the masters, and there were the slaves. The Vreth sold her to a creature named Vel. He was not a Vreth. He was something else, something that looked like a fat lizard with too many teeth. He wore expensive clothes and golden rings on every finger. He ran the arena. The arena was where slaves fought for the entertainment of the masters. Species from 12 different star systems came to watch. They bet huge amounts of money on who would live and who would die. It was brutal and bloody and cruel, and Vel loved every moment of it. Una was taken to a cell beneath the arena. It was small and dark and smelt like blood. There were other fighters in other cells. Some were human. Most were not. They all had the same look in their eyes. The look of animals waiting to be slaughtered. An old human man in the cell next to hers spoke to her through the bars. His name was Byung-ho, and he had been a fighter for 3 years. That was longer than any other human had survived. Byung-ho told her how things worked. New fighters were given easy opponents at first. Small creatures, weak creatures, things that even a human could beat. This made the crowd happy. They liked to see humans win a few times before they died. It made the final death more entertaining. But eventually, every human faced a real opponent. And every human died. Una asked Byung-ho what killed most humans. He laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. The Draxen, he said. They were reptiles that stood 7 feet tall and weighed 400 pounds. Their scales were like armor. Their claws could cut through metal. In 300 years of arena fighting, no human had ever beaten a Draxen. Una's first fight was against a small crab-like creature. She killed it in seconds. Her second fight was against 2 of the crab creatures. She killed them too. Her third fight was against something with tentacles and too many eyes. It almost caught her, but she was faster. She grabbed one of its tentacles and used it to choke the creature until it stopped moving. The crowd started to notice her. She was not like other humans. She did not just survive. She dominated. She moved like water and hit like stone. The betting masters started to take interest. Who was this human female who fought like a demon? Val noticed too. He saw the money coming in. He saw the crowds growing larger when Yuna fought. He decided to give them what they wanted. He scheduled her to fight Gorus. Gorus was the arena champion. He was a Draxan warrior who had killed 200 opponents. He was 8 feet tall and covered in dark green scales. His arms were as thick as Yuna's whole body. His teeth were like knives. When he walked into the arena, the ground shook. The night of the fight, the arena was full. Beings from a dozen species packed the seats. They screamed and cheered and waved their money. They had come to watch a human die. Yuna stood in the center of the arena and looked up at Gorus. He was the biggest thing she had ever seen. He smiled at her, showing all of his terrible teeth. He said something in his growling language. She did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. He was telling her that he would make her death quick. He thought he was being kind. Yuna did not respond. She just watched him. She watched how he stood. She watched how he shifted his weight. She watched his eyes and noticed something interesting. When he looked at her, there was a tiny delay before his body reacted. His brain was slow. His muscles were strong, but his mind needed time to tell them what to do. That delay would kill him. The horn sounded, and Gorus charged. He was fast for his size, but Yuna was faster. She did not run away. She ran toward him. This surprised him, and surprise made him slow. She slipped to his left side, inside the reach of his massive arms, and hit him in the side of his body. She hit him right below his ribs, in the soft place where his organs were. It was a liver shot, the same punch that had ended many of her fights back on Earth. Gorus made a sound like a broken engine. His legs stopped working. He fell to his knees, his eyes wide with shock. The arena went silent. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Yuna did not wait. She spun her whole body and drove her heel into the side of Gorus's head. The kick was perfect. It caught him right on the jaw, and even his thick scales could not protect him. His head snapped to the side. Blood flew from his mouth. He fell forward and did not move. For a long moment, there was no sound at all. Then someone screamed. Then everyone screamed. The arena exploded into chaos. Some beings were celebrating. Some were crying. Some were fighting each other over bets that had just been won or lost. Yuna stood over Gorus's body and breathed. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. But she was alive. She had done the impossible. Vel came to her cell that night. He looked at her with his too many teeth and his greedy eyes. He told her that she had made him very rich. He told her that she would fight again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. He would keep her alive as long as she kept winning. As long as she kept making him money. Yuna looked at him and said nothing. But inside she was thinking. She was planning. Every day she stayed alive was another day to find her brother. Another day to learn the station. Another day to prepare. The Vreth had brought her here to die. Instead, she would bring them to their knees. 17 fights. 17 wins. No human had ever done anything like it. Yuna became famous on Station Korth. The slaves whispered her name like a prayer. The masters spoke it like a curse. Vel put her face on posters and sold little statues that looked like her. He was making more money than he had ever made before. But Yuna did not care about fame. She cared about 2 things: finding her brother and burning this whole station to the ground. The second goal started with a woman named Duhi. Duhi was a human engineer who had been captured 5 years ago. She was small and quiet, with glasses that she had somehow managed to keep through all her years of slavery. She worked in the power station, fixing machines that kept the station running. The Vreth did not watch her closely because they did not think she was dangerous. She was just a small human woman who fixed things. They were very wrong. Dohi had spent 5 years learning every part of Station Korath. She knew where the power came from. She knew where the weapons were stored. She knew where the Vreth commanders slept. Most importantly, she knew where the slave collars were controlled. Every slave on the station wore a collar around their neck. The collar could shock them, burn them, or kill them with the push of a button. It was how the Vreth kept millions of slaves under control. Take away the collars, and the slaves would outnumber the masters 1,000 to 1. Dohi came to Yuna's cell one night, after the guards had changed shifts. She spoke quickly and quietly. She had been planning an escape for months, but she needed help. She needed someone who could fight. She needed someone who could inspire others to fight. She needed Yuna. Yuna listened to everything Dohi said. Then she asked one question. Could Dohi find her brother? Dohi smiled. She already had. Taiho was alive. He was working in the mining section of the station, digging metal out of asteroids that the station swallowed like food. It was hard work and dangerous work, but he was smart enough to stay alive. Dahi had been watching him for weeks. He was already making plans of his own. 2 nights later, Dahi brought Taiho to Yuna's cell. Yuna almost cried when she saw him. He was thinner than before, and there were new scars on his arms, but his eyes were the same. Sharp and clever and full of ideas. He hugged her through the bars and told her that he had never stopped believing she would find a way. Taiho had been busy during his time in the mines. He had learned the station's computer systems. He had made friends with slaves from other species who knew things about security and weapons and escape routes. He had found the room where the collar control system was kept. It was protected by guards and locked doors. But nothing is truly locked when you understand how the locks work. The 3 of them made a plan that night. They would not just escape. Escape was too small. Millions of slaves suffered on this station, and running away would not help them. No, they would do something bigger. They would start a revolution. But first, they needed an army. Yuna started training other fighters. Between her matches, she taught them everything she knew. She taught them how to use their small size against bigger enemies. She taught them where to hit to cause the most pain. She taught them that fear was just another feeling, and feelings could be controlled. The fighters taught others. Word spread through the slave quarters like fire. The human female was training warriors. Anyone who wanted to fight could learn. Not all of them were human. The Fanari were a small species that looked like rats standing on 2 legs. The Vreth treated them like garbage, kicking them and spitting on them for fun. Yuna taught the Fanari to target joints. Their small hands were perfect for grabbing and twisting. 1 Fanari could not hurt a Vreth guard, but 10 Fanari attacking at once could bring one down. The Selkari were water breathers who worked in the station's cooling systems. They were shaped like seals with arms, and their muscles were dense and powerful from swimming all day. Yuna taught them to grapple. Once a Selkari grabbed you, you did not get free. Even some Draxen joined them. Not all Draxen were loyal to the masters. Some had been slaves for generations, forced to fight in the arena until they died. Goris, the champion that Yuna had defeated, was one of them. He had watched her fight 17 times since their battle. He had watched her show mercy when she could have killed. He had watched her train the weak to become strong. Goris came to her cell one night and knelt before her. He said he was ashamed that his people served the Vreth. He said he wanted to fight beside her, not against her. He called her a word in his language that meant something like small one who breaks mountains. Yuna accepted him. She knew that having a Draxan warrior on their side would change everything. Other Draxan would follow Gorus. Other species would believe that victory was possible. The revolution grew every day. Dahi coordinated everything, keeping track of who could fight and who had useful skills. Taiho worked on the collar control system, slowly cracking its secrets. Yuna kept fighting in the arena, keeping the masters distracted, making them think she was just an entertainer. Then Vel made an announcement. In 1 week, there would be a grand exhibition. The greatest show the arena had ever seen. Every Vreth commander on the station would attend. And the main event would be Yuna fighting 3 Draxan warriors at the same time. It was meant to be her execution. Val had grown tired of her fame. The other masters were scared of what she represented. They wanted her dead, and they wanted it to be public. Yuna smiled when she heard the news. 1 week, every enemy leader in one place. Every slave watching. It was perfect. She looked at Dahi and Taiho and said 2 words. We're ready. The night of the grand exhibition, Station Karth was alive with excitement. Lights blazed in every tower. Music blasted from every speaker. Millions of beings filled the streets, drinking and gambling and celebrating. They had come to watch a human die. The arena was packed with more creatures than it had ever held before. Every seat was full. Beings stood in the aisles and hung from the railings. In the special section at the top, every Vreth commander on the station sat in chairs made of gold and bone. High Overseer Threk sat in the middle, the biggest and most powerful of them all. He was 8 feet of armored shell and coal-black eyes. He had ruled this station for 200 years. Tonight, he would watch the troublesome human female be torn apart. Yuna walked into the center of the arena, and the crowd screamed. Some screamed in anger. Some screamed in fear. A few, very few, screamed in hope. She wore simple fighting clothes and nothing else. No weapons. No armor. Just her body and her will. 3 Draxan warriors walked in from the other side. They were huge and covered in weapons. Each one carried a blade as long as Yuna's whole body. They smiled at her with their knife teeth, ready to make her death slow and painful. But Yuna was not looking at them. She was looking at the crowd. She was looking at the slaves who stood behind their masters, holding trays of food and drinks. She was looking at the Fanari who cleaned the floors. She was looking at the Draxan guards who stood at every door. She was looking at Gorus, who stood with the other guards near the main exit. The horn sounded. The fight was supposed to begin. The 3 Draxan warriors charged at Yuna. The crowd roared. This was what they had paid to see. Blood and death and the end of the human who had scared them. Then something strange happened. The warriors stopped running. They lowered their weapons. They turned to face the crowd instead of Yuna. One of them, the biggest one, raised his blade in the air and shouted something in the Draxan language. The Draxan guards at the doors shouted back. Then they raised their own weapons. Not at the slaves. At the masters. Chaos exploded across the arena. The slave callers were supposed to stop this. The Vreth commanders reached for their control devices, ready to kill every slave in the building with the push of a button. But nothing happened. The callers stayed silent. The slaves stayed alive. In the power station far below the arena, Taiho smiled and pulled his hands away from the control panel. 5 years of slavery. 5 years of watching and learning and waiting. It all came down to 30 seconds of typing and one simple command. Disable all collars. The revolution had begun. Yuna did not stand still while the world caught fire around her. She moved through the chaos like a ghost, heading toward the special section where the Vreth commanders sat. Gorus and his Draxan fighters cleared a path for her, cutting down any guard who tried to stop them. Behind them came waves of freed slaves. Fenari attacked in groups of 20, pulling guards down by their legs and arms. Selkari burst from the water pipes and grabbed guards in holds that crushed their armor. Dohi's voice came through hidden speakers all over the station. She told the slaves what was happening. She told them where to go and what to do. She told them that freedom was possible, but only if they fought for it right now, tonight, together. The Vreth commanders tried to run. Some of them made it to escape ships. Most did not. The slaves had waited too long for this moment. They had suffered too much. They showed no mercy because they had never been shown any. Yuna reached the special section and found High Overseer Threk waiting for her. He was not running. He was too proud to run. He stood in the middle of the golden chairs and held a plasma lance in his 4 hands. The lance glowed with deadly blue light. It had killed many rebels before. He intended to add Yuna to that number. Yuna was hurt. She had taken wounds during her charge through the arena. Her left arm hung at a bad angle, broken somewhere between her elbow and shoulder. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. Every breath hurt, but she was not finished. Threk attacked first. He was fast for his size, faster than any Vreth she had fought before. The plasma lance cut through the air, leaving trails of burning light. Yuna could not block it. She could not catch it. All she could do was not be where it was going. She ducked. She rolled. She twisted her body in ways that should have been impossible. The lance missed her by inches, by centimeters, by the width of a hair. Each miss made Threk angrier. Each miss made him sloppier. Yuna saw her chance. She slipped inside his guard, just like she had done with Goris all those months ago. But this time, she did not aim for the soft spots in his armor. She aimed for his eyes. Her fist hit him right in his big black eye. It was the one part of a Vreth that had no armor. Threk screamed. It was a sound that made everyone in the arena stop and turn. The High Overseer, the most powerful being on the station, was screaming because a small human woman had punched him in the eye. Yuna did not stop. She hit him again and again. Her broken arm did not matter. Her bleeding face did not matter. Pain was just a feeling, and feelings could be controlled. She hit his other eye. She hit the joints where his arms connected to his body. She hit the place where his neck met his shell. Threk fell. The plasma lance rolled away from his hands. He tried to get up, but Yuna was already standing on his chest, looking down at him with cold eyes. The arena was silent. Every being in the station was watching. Yuna spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Her voice was rough and tired, but every word was clear. You thought we were weak because we were small. You forgot that the smallest creatures on our world are the most venomous. She raised her fist one more time. When it came down, the revolution was complete. The news traveled faster than any ship could fly. Station Karth had fallen. For the first time in 300 years, a Vreth installation had been captured by slaves. Not just captured, conquered. The High Overseer was dead. The commanders were dead or running. And a human woman stood at the center of it all. The Galactic Hegemony did not believe it at first. How could they? Humans were weak. Everyone knew that. The reports had to be wrong. The information had to be fake. Some rival power must be spreading lies to make the Vreth look foolish. Then they saw the videos. Cameras had recorded everything. The fight in the arena. The callers going dead. The slaves rising up. Yuna standing over Threk's body. The video spread across every network in the galaxy. Billions of beings watched them. Billions of beings saw what a single human could do. The Vreth High Council sent a fleet to take back the station. 50 warships, each one carrying 1,000 soldiers. They expected to find chaos. They expected to find weak slaves who would fall apart without the collars to control them. They found something else. Yuna had not wasted the time after the revolution. She had turned Station Korath into a fortress. Taiho took control of the station's defense systems and pointed every weapon outward. Though he organized the former slaves into teams that kept everything running. Goris trained the fighters, mixing Draxon's strength with human tactics. The Vreth fleet attacked. The station's weapons fired back. Ships exploded in the darkness of space. Soldiers tried to board the station, but they found enemies waiting at every door. Not just humans. Fenari who dropped from the ceiling in groups. Selkari who flooded corridors with water and drowned the invaders. Draxon who had once served the Vreth, but now fought against them. The fleet retreated. It was not a victory for the hegemony. It was a disaster. The High Council sent a second fleet. This one was bigger. 100 ships. 5,000 soldiers. They would not make the same mistakes again. But Yuna was ready for them too. She had spent weeks reaching out to other species. Species that hated the Vreth but had been too scared to fight. Species that had watched the videos and dared to hope. They came to Station Korath in small ships and large ships, bringing fighters and supplies and something even more valuable. Information. The second fleet arrived to find that Yuna knew their plans. She knew which ships carried the commanders. She knew which ships had the weakest armor. She knew exactly where to hit them to cause the most damage. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, half the Vreth fleet was wreckage floating in space. The other half ran away. The hegemony sent a third fleet. This time, they sent everything they had. 200 ships. The largest force they had ever assembled. They would crush this rebellion once and for all. They never reached the station. Other species had been watching, waiting, seeing if the humans could really do what they claimed. When the third fleet flew towards Station Korath, it found itself surrounded. Ships from 12 different species blocked its path. Not attacking, just waiting, sending a message. The rebellion was not alone anymore. The Vreth High Council finally understood. They had made a mistake 50 years ago when they decided humans were weak. They had measured bones and lifespans and concluded that these creatures were nothing to fear. But they had not measured the things that mattered. They had not measured will. They had not measured spite. They had not measured the human refusal to stay down when someone told them they could not get up. Message came to Station Korath. The Vreth High Council wanted to negotiate. Yuna agreed to meet them. Not on their territory. Not on hers. On a neutral station, in a room with windows that looked out at the stars. She brought Taiho and Dohi and Goris with her. She also brought representatives from 42 species. Former slaves. Former prisoners. Beings who had been told their whole lives that they were weak and worthless. The Vreth Council sat on one side of a long table. Yuna sat on the other. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Yuna started talking. She did not yell. She did not threaten. Her voice was calm and quiet, and that made it even more frightening. You studied us for decades, she said. You sent machines to watch us. You recorded everything we did. And you concluded that we were weak. She leaned forward. You measured our bones. You counted our years. You decided we were prey. But you never measured our spite, our stubbornness, our absolute refusal to give up when the universe tells us to quit. She pointed at the window, at the stars beyond. Out there, our ancestors hunted animals 10 times their size. They chased them for days, never stopping, never resting, until the animals dropped dead from exhaustion. They survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have ended them. They built cities and ships and machines that could fly between stars. They did all of this with bodies that you called weak. The Vreth Council members looked at each other. They did not speak. Una stood up. Now, you are going to learn what happens when you corner something that evolved by hunting everything larger than itself into extinction. The negotiations lasted 3 months. They were not really negotiations. They were a surrender. The Vreth agreed to free every slave in their territory. They agreed to pay for the damage they had caused. They agreed to never capture another human again. When it was over, Una returned to Station Korath. She stood on the observation deck and looked out at the ships arriving and leaving. Ships carrying freed slaves to their home planets. Ships bringing supplies and medicine and hope. Ships from species that had been enemies for centuries, but were now learning to work together. Teho stood beside her. He looked older than he had when this all started. Harder, but also happier. What now? He asked why Una thought about it. She had spent so long fighting to survive, fighting to free her brother, fighting to destroy the Vreth. She had not thought much about what came after. Now we build, she said. Now we make sure this never happens again. Teho nodded. That sounded like a lot of work. Una smiled. It was the first real smile she had allowed herself in months. Good thing humans are stubborn. Across the galaxy, species who had lived in fear for thousands of years began to whisper a new word. They said it in different languages, with different sounds, but it always meant the same thing. It meant small but mighty. It meant never giving up. It meant dangerous. Human. The Vreth had thought humans were weak. They had learned their mistake. And the galaxy would never forget the woman whose punches made them weep.